Diva. Whole world is this. Ray Diva. Whole world is this. Ray Diva. Whole world is this. Ray Davis. Whole world is this. Ray Davis. Whole world is this. Ray Davis. Whole world is this. Ray Davis.
Hey, guys, this is your girl, comedian Ray Diva. Welcome to episode 6, and thanks for coming back. I got a treat for y'all today, y'all. I got a treat for you guys today. I brought somebody that I look up to, I admire. He's in the business that I'm in, and I just want y'all to know y'all about to be blessed. I want to give y'all a little backstory. You may have seen him on Def Comedy Jam. He's an actor. He's a comedian. He's a writer. He's an on-air personality. And he a rapper. Fuck! Give it up for Mr. Talent Harris, y'all. Come on, y'all. Talent, I say you a rapper because if anybody has ever been to a show where Talent is hosting, oh my God. When he comes out and he starts rapping, he gets the crowd pumped. Like, this guy is amazing.
Yo, I thought you
Amazing.
were serious because I'm really a rapper. I really used to rap.
Right. You know what? I can tell. Like, you can tell when somebody is just playing a part and when you can tell when they genuinely talented. Talent is genuinely talented. Like, yo, you do everything. You're amazing. How are you?
Well, first of all, I'm fantastic, man. Like life is moving at 100 miles a minute in a good way. You know, you in a fast lane. I'm on my way to Six Flags. I'll be there in an hour. I'm doing very well.
Oh, wow. On you. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's the meta. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't listen, Talent. It is not enough time on my podcast to actually announce all your accolades. Bro, you are you have done so much in your short lifetime. It's amazing. You've done movies. You had the movies of Brothers Kiss. I had to go back and actually look at your body of work. It's amazing. You did the White Boys in the Hood. I didn't even know
Yeah,
about that. The fan favorite, Sunset Park.
yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff, man.
It's like butter, baby. Like, listen, this guy. But I want to start from where most people probably know you from, and I know where I know you from, and that's Def Comedy Jam. You did 2 seasons, correct?
Five, I think.
You did 5
I did
seasons?
4 or 5. I think I did 3 or 4 as guest comedian, and then one season I did a host, the All Star season I hosted when they had the All Star host
Okay. Okay, you're
in,
right.
in LA. They took that one in LA. Had the black football Raider jersey and the Tim Brown Raider jersey. I never forget that.
So can you take us back to, okay, because as a comedian, I just want to go back to that first time you did Def Comedy Jam. What was that experience like for you? I mean, could you just bring us back to that moment? Like, who was before you?
I think it was great. Obviously it was great because it was my hood props at the time. Like in that era in the '90s when Def Jam broke through, it shot to number one comedy show anybody in the world wanted to see, but especially in the hood. Like in the hood, your hood people was like, you ain't a comic, they didn't see you on Def Jam. I had my first TV credit was the Apollo, which was my best TV credit because it was a standing ovation. Apollo was so rough that the fact that I got a standing ovation there, everybody gave me work behind that tape. But in the hood, it was still like, yeah, he ain't really a comedian to us until I got picked at an audition to be on Def Jam. First time I got picked, I got psyched out. They picked me. I won at the audition. They was going to call me, give me all my particulars. When it got to the executives, they was like, oh, you got these music bits that we're not going to clear, so we got to find somebody else to take that spot. And I didn't get on that year. I got on the following season.
Mm,
I had to come back and prove that I was funny without the music bits.
I can't hear.
You got that? You didn't get it?
Oh, yeah, you said you had to come back and prove that you were funny
Oh,
without the music bits.
yeah, I had it because they weren't clearing. If you go back and look at Def Jam, Russell was very smart and strategic. All the music that he played to bring people out, like we do in the clubs, was all Def Jam music. It was
Right.
all his music. So if you was like, I had songs, a bit, my closing bit was snippets of songs. And because that bit was so strong and it was other songs, it was like, yeah, we're not going to clear that. Find another comedian and we'll just have him audition on the next season. So I missed that season, came
Damn.
back to the next season, without music. And then, but that was a blessing in disguise because that got me away from leaning on musical bits like a lot of black comics do. So when you get to the white comedy club and they don't have a DJ, most comics are lost. They're like, oh.
So yeah,
So that helped me
that's one thing that Bob Sumner had taught us from Jump Street. Like, yo, you got music in your set, you're done. We're not putting it on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that in live you can do what the hell you want. It does not matter in live. It really just becomes a problem in recording for people's networks and streaming services and stuff like that. Because all that stuff is money and clearances and permissions and legal ramifications and stuff like that that nobody wants to deal with if they don't have to. So I get it in a big spectrum of things, but as a live performance, do what the hell you want.
So what was your nerves like going out there? Because I know it had to been a crazy feeling for the first
It was
time.
cool. I mean, it wasn't. By the time Def Jam rolled around, I was actually in a more comfortable place. When I did the Apollo, that's where the nerves were reckless. Like Apollo was so nerve wracking that I was shaking before I went up,
Mm.
and I was shaking hours after I had already got a standing ovation. I couldn't even let that sink in and appreciate it. I was still on the back steps, like shaking, like that. It was very nerve wracking at that building. But once you came down and you got back to it, it was like, okay, we're good money now. And then you go walk around the theater and shake some hands and can't wait to get the tape. Can't wait for it to air. And you can't wait to get the tape to send it out and get some more.
And once you did the Apollo, like your price went up, right?
Yeah, well, it went from zero to something because before you had TV, you wasn't getting nothing. You was getting like a boiled up pan of whatever was in it. And then once that happened, then it was like, okay, boom. You know what I mean? Now we're good. You know?
Because people don't understand that the comedy, you're not making this big money when you start out, and it still does. It takes time to earn those big dollars.
But yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it's a buildup. It's a process. But here's the thing: you really only need enough to sustain to keep going. And once you have enough to sustain and keep going, it's like starting a business. Startup money. You want enough to open your doors, get your business going. Once you have customers come in and buying a product or patronizing your business, now you start to get out, into profit areas, stuff like that. It's the same thing with us. For a couple of years, we're doing nothing but hand over fist of free shows and free sets to show our talent and show our skill of what we got. And eventually you get good and people start to slowly pay you. And then they start to slowly pay you more. You can ask for a little more. And then it just keeps going up. And the more credits and accolades you get, the more money you get.
So, Talent, you are, in my opinion, because you've been doing stand up over 30 years, correct?
Yes.
So I feel like you are definitely a fixture in this comedy game. And I just think like you're just such a humble guy. And I've heard so many of the elite comics, so people would want to say, put your name on their lips, like a Bill Burr, like a Chris Rock. If you had to change one thing about stand up comedy, what would it be, if anything?
Um, if I had to change one thing about stand up comedy, I mean, I would go right to people being original and not copying and stealing each other's jokes.
Okay.
That to me, that's the number one thing because it would clear the path for a lot of these brothers and sisters who are funnier than people know because somebody else stole their stuff or beat them to the punch. And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people in place right now that got there because of imitating or duplicating somebody else's originality.
That's a big deal in the comedy business because the people who do take the time out to come up with creative material, to do the legwork, to put the time in, to go to the mics and try it and test it, you feel slighted when people come in the game off of
Yeah.
somebody else's work. It
Mhm.
I know you've seen it all. So as you being a veteran comic and are in a position to booking comics, Do you book people like that?
Oh, absolutely not. If I could help it, absolutely not. Like, unfortunately, one of my companies is a booking company. So I've been booking people as long as I've been in the game as well. And, it hurts my heart. Like when it's up to me, when I got the booking power to do as I please, absolutely not. The only time I might have booked somebody that I really didn't care for, whatever, the client is persistently wanting that person. And as a businessman, you do certain things that, because when you're in bed with business people and partners, you got to respect the partners and do what the business entails. There's stipulations to that. It's sort of like, this Kanye thing. I always compare it to that because it's like people are in an uproar, and I'm like, there's no uproar to be in. If you're in business with, AKA the Jews, and you get on there and say some negative stuff, I'm a DEF CON the Jew. Of course, they're going to jump out of business with you. Why
Exactly.
would I stay in business with somebody that's saying something that's making me uncomfortable? I get it. Everybody else is like, oh, black, white, Jew, this, that, the machine, the big. No, the very simple process of it is, if you're a business person, there's a lot of hood stuff and ghetto stuff, the way we grew up moving. We got to let some of that go now. We can't move like that no more. Not to keep the business. You can't have it both ways.
Mm, exactly. So, do you feel like the internet at all has watered down stand-up comedy?
I don't think so, because I think the internet, um, when you look at like internet and social media stuff like that, I think that those are different variations of comedy, but not exactly stand-up comedy. So people that don't know nobody, including the people doing it, will call themselves comedians, and they're not stand-up comedians. You're somebody doing comedy. You might be a skit producer. You might be a good comedic actor. But a comedian is the guy who does stand-up comedy. And people get on the internet and do all types of TikToks and different things. And, oh yeah, I'm a comedian. Like, don't get me wrong. Some of them are actually comedians who happen to do skits and sketches on TikTok and Instagram. But then some of them never did touch the stage in their life and get on there and do their variation of what they think comedy is. But until you get on the stage and consistently hold down these stages, you're not a stand-up comedian.
So I think the internet, the only thing that I get disappointed in sometimes is because I am a comedian and I'm a respecter of comedian. And I know so many good comedians who have not quote unquote made it yet, but are very funny people. The only thing that I get a little bit not even in my feelings, but turned away about is when people get online and become internet sensations, and then they're headlining comedy clubs getting $10,000 and $15,000, and
Mhm.
comics who are genuinely funny, been out here putting in work for years, go into these clubs and they want to offer you $150, $300. Sometimes that annoys me. And I would think, like, do you think that we would ever have a union as comedians?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's right around the corner. The more it's like the same thing with music. Every branch, I mean, with Johnny Come Latelys, but every branch eventually gets their variation or interpretation of a union. I think we're right around the corner from having that. It's been on us. We as a people just have a problem with coming together, you know, and trusting each other. What does that mean? We get a union. What do I get? Or I've seen people try to form unions several times over the years, and it fall apart before it gets started with something simple like, oh, we're gonna put in $100 dues a month. Dues? What do I get for my $100? I'm not paying $100. Where's it going? Blah blah blah. We just have this thing. They've done such a number on us, brainwashing wise, over the hundreds of years, that we don't even trust each other.
And
Three
that's
rich white
crazy.
dudes can sit down and form a company in a heartbeat. Three black dudes?
Fussing and fighting, because I feel like at some point it would just give us as comedians an equal playing ground. And of course, I feel like it would be rules to the union, like you got to be in so many years, have so many books, but I do think that stand-up comedians need a union. So back to you. You are a father of five, correct?
6. Don't
Six?
don't don't
Okay.
leave that little one
I'm
out.
sorry. I'm sorry. A father of six. How has
That girl be mad as
congratulations.
hell. Ah!
I'm sorry. I mean to exclude anyone. Father of six. So how okay, because we're talking about stand up and we know that this is a business where you do kind of sacrifice a lot. How has it been being a father of six and being in the business?
It's been dope. I mean, the dopest part about it is, like we were just talking about, going along and making more money. The dope part about it is, I could sustain a certain lifestyle where everybody goes to college and have the things they want in life. Like my kids are not wanting for nothing. They're not feeling less than, and stuff like that. So it's provided a ton of things in the 30 years I've been blessed to be doing it. But me, I think it feels great because I also get to see them. And I was one of those fathers, like, when it comes to what you like to do, I'm kind of hands off until it's time to be hands on. Meaning, I don't like to push kids down any alleys because I like something. I know parents that do it all the time. You gonna play football? You gonna play basketball? You gonna do? I don't really care for that type of stuff. So when I see my oldest son, Talent Junior, pick up a microphone and really got serious that he wants to do comedy and how well he's doing, I'm flabbergasted actually. Like it's doing way better than I could have ever dreamed it to be doing for him, and with the minimum amount of help from Daddy. You know what I mean?
Speaking of which, I had an opportunity to work with him. He's very talented. I when I
Yeah.
look at Sunset Park, you and your son are like twins. Oh my God, it is crazy.
Yeah, that's the dude. That's the homie there. I got 3 boys, and it's funny because they all look like me in different stages of my life. That's
Okay.
funny as hell. Like I have a son who, he's a little lighter, but when I was young, real young, like 6 to 10 years old, I was this little real yellow, light skinned dude. Like I got darker as I got older, but that son, he's the youngest. He looks like that. My middle son, Justin, who he looks like me now, and then Talent looks like me, like you said, in those Sunset Park teenage, early 20 years, you know?
Yes, I was like, I was actually like, that's the spitting image. So I wanted to go back. Well, because I was talking about the kids. Because I only asked that because me being a female comedian, I felt like I sacrificed a lot of time with my children to be on the road, to do shows. I missed a lot of things. If it happened on the weekend, I wasn't there because I was going to do a show, you know.
Right.
And I know it's different for dads. But I wanted to go back a little bit because I skipped over something. I kind of wanted to get into how when you started doing stand up, like are the people you start are any of the people still in the game?
Oh,
And
yeah.
okay, so who were some of the people you actually started out doing stand up with?
When I started, you got the Uptown. Let's go to the Uptown Comedy Club. Maceo's still doing comedy. He's like headline on the cruise lines.
Mm,
Tracy Morgan, obviously. Um, who else was Flex Alexander? I don't know if I seen Flex do a couple of shows this past year, so I think he stopped for a while with the acting thing. They came back, so Flex Alexander's still out there. Hamburger had started a little bit before me. Cool Baba Ice started a little bit before me. So all those guys are still there. Jay the comedian,
wow, and they're
he's still
all
there.
heavy hitters.
Oh yeah, my clique, my personal clique, was myself, Ian Edwards, Will Sylvance, my man called Xavier. Xavier's not doing it no more. Ian's still doing his thing, dropping specials. Will Sylvance is doing his thing and working with NBC, doing movie shorts and everything, still doing stand up. But we were real tight. Artie Fuqua, who was in the car accident with Tracy Morgan, he
Yes,
was
I
part
heard
of our
that.
little tight camping clique. So we had a nice little clique of 5 that we were rolling around with. Franz Cassius was doing comedy. So a lot of these guys are still in the game doing their thing.
That's a great lineup of comedians. Me personally, and this is just my thoughts. I feel like a lot of you guys that started back in your time and that came up when you came up, I just feel like I don't know, the content was so original and it was just so a breath of fresh air. It was so new. Everything wasn't saturated.
Right.
I don't
I agree.
I can't explain the feeling of like even as watching you and others on Def Comedy Jam, it was amazing. And it just seems like comedy has become, I won't say watered down, but the talent, like talent, um is different to me anyway. But we still got some funny talented comedians out here. It's just the Jaw era to me put out some of the most genius works of art in history. So I got a question for you. If somebody told you, okay, I want you to put together, I want to do a master class for comedy, and I need you to pick some comedians to help teach this class, who you picking?
I'm picking Kyle Grooms. I'm picking Tony Woods.
Hmm.
I'm picking a couple of them have passed away, but I would grab the hamburgers, the fundamentally sound guys, because you need a collective fusion, if you will, of different areas. Some guys are better at other areas than others. Like you got guys that are just funny,
Hmm.
and but they wouldn't be the guys you would pick for the master class because they wouldn't be able to teach their funny. That's the thing about comedy. We can't teach our funny. We can teach general, fundamental funnies. And but what goes with it is you need these guys that know better to tell you how to be on time to your shows. You know what I mean? Have integrity, how to be creative, how to write a joke if you're writing, and those different ailments that go with that. So yeah, I'm picking Tony Woods for sure because his realism and his timing is impeccable. Like
Mm.
guys like that are impeccable, and I probably grab a Chris Rock in there, because Chris Rock, I don't know if I know anybody that worked harder than Chris Rock to get where he is
Right.
right. You know what I
That's
mean? If you know
crazy.
early Chris Rock, his work ethic is sick.
Tony Woods, I'm just glad you picked him because he is one of the comedians. He's People don't understand that man is funny off the stage. He reminds me of you in a similar, like y'all are funny, period, on and off stage. And I've worked with him several times, and I'll go and I'll say, Tony, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? And then he said, say it. And then I'll say it, and then the one he'll be like, boom, there it is, shorty. And I'm like, that's it. And I would just take a cue and just go back and say it that way. But like you said, yeah, he does. His timing is great.
His timing is impeccable because what makes him so great is like I actually, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, I'm actually always thinking about timing. But the fact that I'm thinking about it makes me less great than Tony Woods because Tony Woods is not thinking about timing, but somehow whatever the hell he's talking about drops right on time.
Right. I'm kind of like with you. I've worked with you before, and I think I'm more scared to ask your opinion. I will ask you, but I'm like, oh my god, I gotta go up here and ask this man. I know his shit wasn't all that, and I don't even want to hear it. Like I'm that kind. Like I don't even want to hear it. Then you just look like, yeah. So how'd it feel? I'm like, oh, it felt like some shit. Like. And then I'll be mad that I didn't videotape it and be able to go back. But I'm grateful for comedians like yourself and the Tony Woods and all the other great comedians that actually lend a hand to helping and assisting us newer comics. So we about to wrap this interview up. I don't want to take up all of your time. So I do have one other question for you, Mr. Harris. What do you
Yes, man.
have coming up next? Because I see you have your hand in so much stuff.
Oh man, this documentary. We're telling a story. I've been having this baby, sitting on my desk for a long time, and then
Mm,
I got a call from somebody in production of something similar, and I was able to. We were able to come to a compromise because it was kind of the same project, except they didn't understand because I lived it. I was bringing something extra to the story that they weren't. Their story was about to be about one club or one area, and I'm like, no, dude. We lived through this. This is a renaissance, a whole moment, if you will, a whole movement. So this thing called This Is Comedy tells the renaissance of black comedy metamorphosing out of being called black comedy. Like
Mm,
we are comedy now. The top earners of happen to be people of color. And the top sellers in all the comedy clubs and major outlets and theaters are people of color, comedians of color, with the exception of a couple of people like Bill Burr, you know what I mean, a couple of other big names. 90% are black comedians. So we've earned the right. There was this big, I would say, 30+ year movement, a renaissance that took us out of that little box they try to keep us in called black comedy.
mm,
As long as I keep that box of black comedy, I necessarily don't have to allow you over here mainstream or what I call white comedy or mainstream comedy. But when we kicked all those doors down, you have no choice. The numbers don't lie, the television don't lie, the big screen don't lie, the radio don't lie. We are all one comedy thing. We done broke our way in. You know what I mean? We done put the dues out there, paid them to the fullest, and now it's comedy. So this documentary is called This Is Comedy. It says this is black comedy and the blacks crossed out, and it's like this is comedy, and it tells that whole story. And in telling that story, in the 90s we had a food chain that went through all the major cities and some of the B markets. So I got to go to Detroit and show you what was happening in Detroit at the same time was happening in Chicago and was happening in Milwaukee, was happening in Miami, and was happening up in Boston, and was happening over here in Jersey, and was happening in Connecticut. So all of these cities and these states, it was all the movement was happening simultaneously. And when I tell that story, and well, this documentary tells that story, you got to go through everything. You go to the ones we lost along the way.
mm.
You go through Kevin Hart borrowing money on the road and spending it before you get it, and drinking all the liquor up, and you go through the ones that battle alcoholism. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
everybody has a story, and when you dive in a little bit and say, "Oh, that," you'll start to put the piece together. That's why that happened. That's why that.
Mm,
Like a lot of people don't know this one simple jewel. The reason we have comedy rooms is because of Def Comedy Jam. Def
yes.
Comedy Jam comes, kick the door open. Now the whole world wants to see this certain type of comedy, right? It wasn't in the clubs yet, the comedy clubs. So because they weren't letting us in the clubs at the time that this was booming, we started to make our own stages. And we did that by finding little restaurants or lounges or clubs or wherever we could put a stage and a mic and a DJ and give that replica kind of a show that people were looking to go to. And that's in the essence of it, the biggest fundamental lesson you can learn to see from that is half the comedy clubs had to close down because they refused to bring in black business,
Mm,
and white people wasn't keeping you open. All they're drinking is beer, and you got to let them in free. So that was hard to make money off of. And the ones who got it, they started opening the doors and figure how can we get in bed and do business with the urban side and the black comedians because that's what people want to see. So the Carolines and the Improvs and the Funny Bones and those clubs started to have urban nights, and then the urban nights turned into weekends. Next thing you know, every other weekend is a blackface headlining, and so they could do the numbers. If you go on any website of a comedy club right now,
hmm.
you go on anyone right now,
You see
same
it.
thing.
Yes.
Yep, you'll see it.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because I still feel like in this day and age, as some of these clubs
You want
still
to
try some of these clubs still try and make the black comics feel a little bit less important, but it is changing. But it's funny that you say that. And I definitely can't wait until this project comes out because when I started doing stand up, I
uh-huh.
didn't know what a Def Jam comic was. I just wanted to do stand up comedy. And I started in New York. I was taking classes at Gotham's, and I had a white comedian to tell me, we don't want a Def Jam comic, and basically tried to micromanage my set. And I got a little lost in that, and because now it's like, okay, I want to bring my authentic self to the stage, but these people are telling me that's not the route to go. So I had to get away from that mindset. But I
Yeah.
definitely saw what you're saying as far as when I started doing stand up. I didn't know what a Def comic, the Jam comic was. Like, I didn't know it was a negative thing, is what I'm trying to say.
It wasn't. That's the racist part of that time and era of comedy. It's like anything else. You know what I mean? If in other words, lack of a better word, ghetto. So
Right.
the mainstream comic was looking down on you, and people
Exactly.
like you because of your color, and assuming, first of all, why would you say that to a person other than the fact that they're black that you're talking to? We don't want the
Exactly.
Def Jam content. So right there, it's starting on a racist overtone. Um, and the reality is, what we found out fast forwarding about 10, 15 years from that moment in time is that you were afraid. People are always afraid of change because change sometime or most of the time in history replaces something else.
Mm,
So they don't want to be replaced. They don't want, and they know that the people will laugh at that, but I don't want that in here because that's going to outshine what I'm working on over here and most likely replace it. So it ain't no different than the people who hate automated systems and robots because they say, oh, they taking my job. Well, you should have went to school and got another job. You should have learned
right.
something that ain't gonna have a robot involved. You know what I mean? Like, but if you don't think that far ahead of time, you're caught up in the trap. And they seen sometimes you can see change coming, and you do your best to hold it off as long as you can.
Right. So I do have one more question. Do you, I won't say any regrets, but do you have anything that you would change about your career in this path?
Yes, I would always change. What stands out to me, my good friend and manager back in the day, real early in my time. When he gave me access keys to his comedy club to do a Sunday night at the Boston Comedy Club in New York City, he would come out time to time and watch what was going on. And he was seeing the growth in me before myself, right?
Mm,
And I remember him saying more than one occasion, first he would go through what he saw, whatever the bit is, whatever the set is, and talk about how the genius and the joke and this, that, stuff. And he always end up in the same place of the conversation and goes, man, you just got to, he said, I want to give you some advice, but I don't want you to look at me a certain way or want you to come off the wrong way. And I'm like, give me whatever advice you want. And the advice was, he said, you need to separate yourself. Remember how we talked about I rolled in a little crew? So he
yes.
was like, you need to separate yourself. Now, my ignorance and my whole blacker than black persona, thinking everything's, a divide and conquer or whatever, or the
Mm-mm.
white man trying to separate us, and, all that shit going on in my head. Couldn't see the forest through the trees. And the man, like, it took so many years later that I could look back and started to see how the man was right. He was no longer my master, but I would look back and go, he's right. It was several things going on. I was watching people closest to me starting to sound like me, starting to steal jokes or premises and stuff, and but replica of you and all that. And you like, damn, if I separated myself, A, you get noticed quicker. B, you nip that in the butt where people can try to almost become you or at least steal your stuff, and replicate you.
I, that's, see, comedy is such a complex business to be in. And when you
Yeah,
said that, and people don't understand, they, from the outside looking in, you may think that it's very petty, but I've even experienced where somebody will take not the whole joke, just two words,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
and now you have stepped on my punchline, and you
yeah,
around me all the time. Why would I want you going in front of me when you stepping on my shit? Like, I mean, to an average person, it's like, oh, they just no. It's bigger than that.
yeah. It's so much bigger. And I've learned the slick ones. What they do is the original stealing when you don't know no better. You just steal it. Then the creative ones, it was like, you know what? They'll hear a premise, a subject matter, or a topic, and be like, "Oh, nobody's even thinking. That's genius to even think of it." And then they just watch you do it, and then they go and do a variation of the same premise or topic. And it's like it's a topic you wasn't even thinking of. So if I thought of it and then you go do it right after me, you still stole it.
Exactly. I had a situation where somebody actually, and I hate to bring this shit up, but somebody actually early on in my career, I would have a premise and they would help me finish it, like with my, like maybe the last, to bring it home, sort of say, like give me the last
Uh-huh.
tagline or whatever. And then when we were no longer cool, they started using it again. And so, and I stopped using it. But then I was like, you know what? That's my stuff. I'm going to use this anyway because it was mine from the jump. But comedy is weird like that. Like, you just can't go, because see, people will accuse you. If you're newer and you
Yeah,
say something, people are going to accuse you of taking a veteran's material. And that's never a
exactly.
good place to be in.
But see, integrity is everything in stand up. Remember this. Like that's what separates you from other people. Like what makes me know I'm different is I was in club one time not too long ago, and I was doing a cracking on somebody walking in, and I made a reference to like lean on me or whatever, and my punch in closing was different than what I thought everybody else would do. So as soon as I got off, of course, comedian was like, "Oh man, I thought you was gonna do the da da da." I said, "But that's why I'm me, because you
Right.
thought I was gonna do that, and I did that." You know what I'm saying? So that's a different integrity. Then last week I'm in a comedy club, and just in conversation, we came up talking in the conversation something real funny, and I say to the other comic, I go, "Ooh, that's funny." I was like, "Am I gonna take that, or you gonna take that?" And he was like, "Oh, we both could take it." I said, "No, nigga, they no both. I don't do that. It's like we met a bad chick, we gonna share her. No, nigga.
Because I've had that happen. I've been in a car with some comics. If you say something real funny, I'll be like, oh, just so you know, I might use that. I don't
Right.
want
I'm
nobody
putting it out there. I'm
surprised."
putting it out there. Yeah, put it out there. Because you got integrity. Like people
Right.
without integrity don't care.
Because I've had a comedian I rode somewhere with, and they went on the stage and said exactly what I said in the car ride. I got mad only because it wasn't a part of my set. It wasn't my material. But I'm like, damn,
It
you
was
couldn't
still
have
you.
just said I'm about to use it or something.
It was still you. They were supposed to say, hey, I'm gonna do that, or I'm gonna say this or that or what. But that's what I'm saying, man. All you got in this game, longevity is based and connected to your integrity. And if you don't have integrity, then you will do anything to anybody. And nobody gonna trust you. You're not gonna have any long years in this game. You want to be comedy is a job you can do forever if you do it right.
Yes, it is. Well, talent, I don't want to take up any much more of your time. We talked about how your time is worth lots of money. But I do want to say once again, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me. I hope that you come back. I want to tell anyone watching, make sure you check this man out. He is funny. You will not stop laughing. Google him, find out where he's going to be in your city. Show up and show out for this man. He's one of the greats, one of the legends of comedy. I want y'all to give it up one more time for Mr. Talent Harris. Thank you so much, Talent. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me. God bless. You
Thank
already
you.
know. I love you. Keep
Love you
doing what you're
too.
doing.
Right there. Whole world is this. Right
Oh,
there. Whole world is this. Right 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 there.